show up at your manager's door and say, we should have ebooks, and expect something to happen. You have to have a plan. I would also say on behalf of managers everywhere, if you are the kind of person who shows up and says, we should have ebooks, that you consider how that's being received and how successful that a tactic is for you, because maybe you're the person it works for, but I'm not. So a plan is key. And because I believe that, I'm going to assert that any goal can be project managed. And I think actually any goal and every goal should be project managed, maybe even must be project managed. Because I'll say it again, change doesn't just happen. Change happens because someone worked hard to put themselves in that right place at that right time. So you have to work hard to put yourself in that right place at that right time. Plan for brilliance, and then agitate for success. So how, right? You're still waiting for me to tell you a how. And again, I will say plan. Some people seem to think that planning for a goal or a dream sounds completely bizarre, and so I will explain what I mean by that. The first step is to identify your goals. It's the part I talked about first. Name your passion. Figure out why you want this thing. And then, from there, map out the steps. This is the crunchier bit. If your goal is to make sure that your library's website is responsive and modern because that's in the best interests of your users and your community, then what's your first step? If that's your passion, how do you get started? I can't tell you that. That's where your reality comes into play, because you need to ask yourself, who are you in the food chain of your library to make such a thing happen? Who's in charge of the thing you want to change? What's your relationship to that person and all the other people who are involved in the process? What allies are you going to need to make it happen? What's it going to cost? Both in money and in time and in political capital. All of those things matter. And they are all the things that will help you define your first step. Because your first step might be that you need a user needs survey, or it might be to ask for a meeting with the person who regularly maintains your website, or it might be writing up a budget projection. I can't know that for you. What I can know is that if you don't have a plan, you won't know where to begin, and you may not begin smartly. Once you've started building a plan, I would propose that you also need to understand your personal need for accountability. And accountability goes in both ways. So how much do you need to know, to understand, and to report out to other people? How much do you need other people to know, to understand, and report back to you? How much do you need to be involved in the decision-making process, either as a contributor to the decision or as the person who makes the decision? What is it that you need to do and update? And who do you need to be updated by and on what? Prepare to ask for the information you need and be prepared to give it in return. These are things that both mean that you're not scrambling at the last minute and also make you appear very smart when people ask you for things and you've already anticipated that they're going to need to know. Along with that, understand your need for support. We're each different kinds of social creatures, and so each of us is going to have a different kind of need for teamwork, validation, attention, participation. Do you want to work on something as a lone participant? Do you want to be part of an active team? What is it that you need in order to be successful in any given project? If you know that, you can agitate for it and make sure you have the support structure in place to give you what you need. And then when you consider those questions, include them all in your plan and make yourself a map. We are very good at thinking about things, but we are not always so good at following through on them. So I'm serious about this part. Make a plan, draw yourself a map, and follow it. Don't self-sabotage. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen librarians build a great plan for something and then do something entirely different. They get through step one and then they veer off because something distracted them. There was some new need they hadn't thought about, and off they go in some other direction. That was a really good plan, and if you'd stuck to it, you'd be less flustered right now. So you built a plan based on your needs and goals, and your needs and goals matter. They have value. So treat yourself accordingly and follow through. And when I say that, I don't mean that you need a complex process map that tells you what you do every minute of every day in 10-minute increments and therefore guides your work, although that may be very cool and very helpful to some people. But if you haven't considered the needs, outcomes, accountability, support, and issues of getting things done, you can't know in advance how you might choose to respond to them. Human beings function much better when we have a script for something. If you have a script for a conversation or a script for responding to a challenge, it gives us a bit more confidence to move through. And so if you've thought about all these things, you can do a bit of that scripting in your plan of, if X happens, then we will do Y. It will prevent you from veering off and taking a left turn when you really should have kept going straight. And it, in fact, can simply just protect you from yourself, which sometimes we need. Okay, new metaphor. For a few minutes, we're all astronauts. I always wanted to be an astronaut, but I couldn't figure out how one did that. So I ended up a librarian. I don't really. So, astronauts. You want to reach the stars. You've got a dream, and you want to get to the stars. But you look around and you know that what you can actually do is get to the moon. That's a reasonable goal. You know how to do that. You can get there. So you're going to plan to go to the moon. In your planning process, though, you realize that you can't just get to the moon. To get there with the resources you have available to you, you have to build a really ugly rocket. You hate that rocket. It's not pretty. It's not what you wanted, but you know it's going to get you there. So I would say, love that rocket. You need that rocket. Give it a cool name, paint it a better color, ignore how ugly it is. And remember that it's what is going to get you there and that getting there is important because going to the moon is in support of your passion. You know why you're doing this. To bring it back down with an example, I'm currently, our library is currently in the last stages of a website redesign, so I have websites on the brain and they are easy examples for me, so we're going back to this theme. Your passions about user service tell you that what you want is a new information architecture for a website, for a vital service for your community. That's your stars. But you know, when you consider the reality of your situation, that what you can get is an update on the content on your current kind of clunky website. That's the moon. But as you start building your plan of action, you realize that to get that update, you're going to have to agree to do a customer needs survey. You really don't want to. You think it's kind of pointless. You don't believe it can tell you anything you don't already know from working with your community and from doing your own professional research. But the powers that be that control your work believe that this is useful data to be gathered and that the hard data will make a stronger case than anecdotal reporting. So that survey, it's a necessary step to get administrative buy-in for your plan to get to the moon, and so it's your rocket. In that moment, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong about that survey, you need it. You have to do it. It's what's going to get you there. It may be a damn ugly survey, and it may be that it makes you very unhappy to have to do it, but it's the process that matters. So I would say embrace it. Your goal matters to you. Getting to the moon matters to you because your passion has declared that getting to the moon is really important. And so embrace the process because you know it's worth it in the end, no matter how ugly that rocket may be. So embrace the process, but don't be a pushover to it. Let's go back to the hill. New metaphor. Some people have to be encouraged to embrace process as a necessary part of the process for planning for success. But other people, sometimes people begin something and then have poured so much energy into climbing that hill that they can't imagine stopping. It happens to us all at some point or another. Sometimes you've given so much, tried so hard that you can't fathom turning back. You just can't stop. You can't stop. I'm an occasional rock climber, so I know that when you've got knees full of stone from smashing into the rock because you can't reach that next hold, it's really hard to consider not going on and not getting to the top. You have to finish. You feel like you've given so much, you couldn't possibly stop now. But when you've given weeks or months of time, energy, startup funding, it becomes even more impossible to declare that something is a failure. So I would advocate that we all remember why we set ourselves on a particular climb. Come back to your passion. Why are you climbing this hill? Why are you scaling this rock face? Why are you facing off with that immovable person who won't get out of your way and let you do this thing? Why did you start this project? Why are you advocating that it be finished? What is your end goal, and why do you care? Come back to your passion. In moments of crisis, you have to think about that passion, and you have to ask yourself, have you passed your point of no return? Have you truly reached the point where the project must be completed? Or is there a way to say, I'm done climbing now and I would like to come down? We often have inherently altruistic reasons for doing things. I think that being in libraries means that you have a desire to serve the needs of others. We are a giving profession. And so serving the needs of others, it's part of our daily operating principles. And that altruism often leads us to think that turning back or admitting defeat is purely unacceptable. There's also some correlation between our willingness to fail and not giving a damn, but I think that when you do give a damn, there's a point where being altruistic prevents success by preventing failure. If you can't acknowledge that a project is doomed, that you can't say this was a mistake, you'll never stop doing it. And if it isn't working, and it can't work, but you can't say that it can't work, you're going to keep pouring resources altruistically off a cliff. And that wasn't really our goal, was it? That wasn't what you were trying to accomplish. You weren't trying to dump money and time and resources down the drain. That wasn't what you wanted when you started. So earlier I said, be an optimist and believe that it can be done, but I would amend that to be the kind of optimist that makes people want to follow you, not the kind of optimist that can't see the truth through their belief and so fails. This is the same thing we heard yesterday, that passion can sometimes be the thing that blinds you to reality. Sometimes it goads you forward when really you should be taking a step back and thinking about what you're doing. So you have to parse out what's probable and what's possible. And when you hit the not very probable, only possible with tactical nuclear weapons stage, even an optimist has to know that it's time to back down. Because you're not always going to succeed. That's also part of reality. So I ask you to consider, do you know where your tolerance for failure is? How accurate is your personal gauge as you assess challenges in front of you? How high are you willing to climb knowing that the oxygen's going to get thin and it's a hell of a long fall to the bottom if you slip? Or to switch visual metaphors again, how strong is your egg? How fragile is your egg? Strong things can be fragile if you know where to push on them, and fragile things can be strong if you know how to hold them right. So do you know where your tolerances are? In order to choose projects, goals, dreams, and plan for smart risks, you have to know not only how high you're willing to climb and how hard you're willing to work, but you have to know if you can handle failing. So before you start chasing any new passion, and before you say yes or no to an opportunity, I would suggest that we all ask ourselves one question, which is, what's the worst that could happen? And I don't mean that in a flip way. We say it all the time, but what's the worst that could happen? No, but I really mean it. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? We're really good at thinking about best. We predict success brilliantly. Our users will come in droves and they will love us dearly. Yay, best case scenario. We pick projects and battles and hills because we can imagine the pinnacle, we can see what success would look like, and we want that. And that's fantastic. That is the passion that drives us, and let that guide you. But know what you're doing. Consider failure. What's the worst that could happen? And once you know what the worst is, then ask yourself the second question, which is, can I handle that? An example, I was asked to give a keynote presentation at an international conference very, very far away. And I thought to myself, what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is that I would fail miserably, I would say terrible things, and no one would be impressed, and they would regret having paid to have me come to this beautiful country. And then I thought, can I handle that? And the answer is yes, because it just meant I would never come back as a librarian to New Zealand ever again. It's a pretty good decision-making rubric. And I don't advocate for thinking about what's the worst that could happen because I believe we should operate from a place of fear. Far from it. Fear is the worst possible driver for decision-making. Fear isn't strong. Fear is not hopeful. Fear is not wise. Fear reacts, fear protects, and fear makes us small. Those are not things that I want us to do. Those are not where I want our profession to go or what I want to have driving us. But we must know how far we can push ourselves before we break. And we must anticipate both the negative and the positive consequences of our choices and actions in order to make strong, wise, hopeful choices. So know what you want and know what you can handle, and then make a choice to move forward. And if you can name your own tolerance for failure, you have to also acknowledge that every other person you encounter has a tolerance too. We're all human. We have issues. This is truth. We all have a point of fear. Beyond this line, I do not go. Spiders. Spiders is one of my lines. I don't do spiders. You say spiders, I say no. Fortunately, spiders are not a big feature of academic libraries. So professionally speaking, I'm pretty golden on that one. But you give me a spider in my bathroom and I turn into terrified, trembling stone. I know this. I've got a line. Spiders. And so people fear things. Other people would look at my spider and think that that's pretty silly, but it matters to me. And so professionally, one of the things that many of us fear is failure, with different points of tolerance. Someone else's fear of failure may hit a point where it is, I look at it and say, really? You can't handle that? But they may look at me and say, really? A spider? So you have to accept that other people will react differently around failure and around their fears than you might. When people hit their point of tolerance for fear of failure or fear of something else, they often become, new metaphor, a brick wall. And part of being a change agent is knowing when you're bashing your face into a brick wall with a person and when they are, in fact, possibly just a closed door. There's great strength in seeing that barrier for what it is, because sometimes if you look at it and realize that this is immovable, this is something this person cannot move past, you can stop hitting the brick wall. You can stop trying to go through something you cannot go through. And it gives you permission in that moment to ask for help or to try something different. Fear of failure, fear of anything, fear, is a really powerful motivator. And so if someone is strongly rooted in it, you may not be strong enough to move them aside. But you can always move yourself. You may not have the power to change systemic things about other people and the way that you work with them, but you can always change yourself. So one way to start is to ask yourself why someone is blocking you, and ask yourself what you can do about that, if it's worth doing, and if you can do it. So to deal in my own chosen visual metaphors here, if passions are hills that you can choose to die on, people and their fears are walls, and if you can't find a way to go through a wall, try opening a door. Or if you can't open a door, try climbing over the wall, or go around it. Be creative. But this is the point where somebody somewhere out there is thinking, that brick wall is my boss, and you just said climb over her or go around. And that's terrible advice. Yeah, you're right, that's terrible advice. So 2 things in response to that. Can someone else change your unchangeable? Yeah, you can't go over your boss or go around her, but is there an ally or an advocate who can boost you over the wall, who can speak in ways that you can't speak, who can say things you can't say, who can craft an argument that is true and believable, but which you don't have the authority to present? Find yourself a team. Because sometimes our power lies not in speaking, but in finding someone to speak for us. For example, I am the top of the administrative food chain in the college libraries. And so my voice has power, and I try to use it thoughtfully. But I am the very bottom of the administrative food chain on the university's admin team, which I am a part of, because I am the youngest and the newest. And so there are times when my power doesn't come from standing up and saying something in a meeting, but it comes from talking to someone else about my idea because they have the power and the voice to say the thing that I want to say. Sometimes speaking is not where your power lies. Sometimes speaking is the thing that will actually distract you. But finding an ally is the place where your power lies. And the second thing, even if you can't find someone to help you with the issue in front of you, even if this turns out to be a wall you can't get through, a climb you need to turn back from, go find allies anyway. You need support. We all do. None of us can do this alone. You need to have people who get you, who will feed your passion when the world starts sucking you dry, who will prop you up when you feel wobbly, who will sit around at a bar with you after a conference when you are making bad jokes about librarian stereotypes and railing against the world. And so your community might be local. It could be your coworkers if you are lucky enough to work in a place where everyone feels the way that you feel, or you have a strong ally right there next to you every day. Or it might be regional. It might be national. It might be international, in my case, for example. It might be online. But find that network. Use your professional organizations, your professional development opportunities, and the internet to build a world of professional peers who can offer you a hand when you need it, because none of us function well alone. Steve Jobs built the iPad and everything that came before it because he has an army of smart, creative people standing with him who were generating ideas, making them real on behalf of the company and their lead innovator, and supporting that innovation from all over. You're no different in needing that kind of team behind you. And I say that because one of the reasons you can't function alone is that you're going to need to network someday. I will grant that there are many people in our profession who are, in fact, in their last position. But it is also true that if you are taking ownership of your choices and choosing to make your passions actionable and deciding that you believe in your dreams, you're going to sometimes find that you've outgrown the capacity of your current place of employment. And I acknowledge that it's a terrible economy, both globally and locally, but there are always other jobs. You can choose to move on. And in that moment, your professional buddies are often the ones you can turn to when you move forward. The ones who know things about the jobs that you're considering, who can give you a lead on something interesting, or who will simply support you when you make changes in your life. So cultivate that network. And if there aren't other jobs for you, if it's not that you're at the end of your career, but it's that for whatever reasons are part of your local reality, your personal circumstances, you can't move. There's no other option for you, then I hope that you will consider what you're giving up if you can't embody your passion in your current position, or you've chosen not to. You're making a choice and a sacrifice if you don't have room to act on your goals and your dreams. You're the only one who can know if that's the right decision for you, but I hope that you know that you can make a choice about that. And so, to begin to wrap this up, what I'm saying is that to succeed and be proud of who you are as a professional, you have to focus on your own reality and know what you need as a human being. You have to be able to decide what you need to accomplish, what you want to try, what you desire as goals, and what you simply cannot live without. If you don't know those things, setting your priorities appropriately is nearly impossible. But if you can identify your strengths, your resources, and your values, regardless of your personal situation, you'll know which hills to climb, you'll know how to build a plan that includes all the important stuff, and you'll know when to turn back and ask for help. Without a strong sense of who you are and what you need, you're going to be taking the hard road, and I think the world needs too much change for any of us to do it the hard way. And I say that because I don't care whether you think that our shared future of transformational change is exciting, terrifying, or just par for the course. I don't care what your passion is. And honestly, thinking back about all of the things that we've heard in the last 3 days, I really don't give a shit how hard things are. How bad everybody says things are, or how bad your personal funding is in your library. This is life. This is our profession. This is our world. This is it. I grew up in Illinois, and Illinois is a part of the country which has lots of two things: corn and soybeans. Farmers as far as the eye can see, and it is a very flat piece of country, so the eye can see pretty far. And when I was 16, I was taking my mandatory course in US history, and I saw a trend, which is that farmers have never had a good year. Apparently this is internationally true as well. If crops are good, prices are low. If the prices are high, the crops are crap. And if the crops for some reason turn out to be pretty okay, the prices are probably mediocre and everybody's just getting by. The cycles repeat. The farmers have never had a good year. But here's the thing, they keep farming. Even though it's hard and nobody gets rich, they keep farming because growing things matters. Feeding people is important. And if it's a bad year, get over it. So be it. And I think that libraries are very much the same. We have been here for a long time, and I'm pretty sure we've never had a good year. So, hey look, it's not a good year for libraries in a lot of places. We're all struggling. We're all trying to figure out what our path forward is. We wish we had more money. People don't understand us. The stereotypes suck. So what? Get over it. Move on. It's never been a good year for libraries, and so keep farming anyway. Decide what you value and fight for it. Go do something. Change the world. Thanks.
Yeah, there is time for questions. Oh, you can. Kia ora. Thanks very much, Jenica, and we do have time for a couple of questions. There's a microphone at the front here. Any questions? Comments?
Challenges. Tell me I'm crazy.
I think they're all a bit stunned.
I've done this same talk twice now so far, and there weren't any questions at either of them. I tend to think that perhaps I'm shocking people a little bit, but I hope it's making you think.
I do have one question.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, do you get fitter the more hills you climb?
Yes. Every time you pick a challenge and move through something, you learn some new skills. You learn about yourself, you learn about your institution, you learn about what matters, and so you get better at it. And it hurts less every time, I think.
That's good to know that your knees and your legs don't hurt as much if you keep doing it. And I do think here in Wellington that we have a natural advantage. Certainly at Victoria we have to climb a hill every day just to get to work. So I'm hoping that makes us a bit fitter. There was a question or a comment? Thanks, Joan.
Hi, Joan Simpson from Canterbury University. Look, I just wanted to say thank you very much for that session. It has been a hard year, and one of the things that is hard as a manager to say to your staff is this is it, this is what we've got, and we need to go on from here and let's make the most of it. So thanks for just saying it back to us.
I'm glad to.
Well, I'd just like to thank Jenica very much on behalf of LIANZA, on behalf of TELSIG. Thanks for coming all the way around the world, for thinking what's the worst that could happen. I think we can safely say you can come back to New Zealand as a librarian.